Just 5 blocks from Amazon's gleaming headquarters, where tech executives earn 7-figure salaries, hundreds of people are shooting heroin in broad daylight, while police officers admit they've stopped patrolling entire city blocks. You've seen Seattle's polished image, but the reality hidden behind the tech facade will leave you stunned. Walk through Pike Place Market on any Saturday morning, and you'll see exactly what Seattle wants the world to see. Tourists snap photos of flying fish, sip artisanal coffee, and browse handcrafted goods worth more than most people's monthly rent. But step just 3 blocks east toward the waterfront, and you'll discover encampments where over 200 people live in makeshift shelters constructed from shopping carts, tarps, and broken dreams. This geographic divide isn't accidental. Seattle's $200 billion tech economy has created the most extreme wealth gap on the West Coast, according to 2024 census data. While Amazon employees receive housing stipends of up to $40,000 annually, just to afford basic apartments, families who've lived here for generations find themselves priced out of neighborhoods their grandparents built. The contrast becomes surreal when you realize that less than half a mile separates luxury condos selling for $3 million from areas where police openly admit they've reduced patrols due to safety concerns. First Avenue between Pike and Pine Streets, once the heart of Seattle's arts district, now requires business owners to hire private security just to keep their doors open during daylight hours. You'll find similar scenes throughout South Lake Union, where gleaming tech campuses overlook sprawling homeless encampments that local residents now refer to as permanent fixtures. The people living there aren't invisible anymore. They're impossible to ignore. But the numbers behind this crisis are even more shocking than what meets the eye. King County now houses over 40,000 homeless individuals, according to the latest 2024 point-in-time count, making it home to more people without shelter than the entire population of Bellevue. Think about that for a moment. Seattle's neighboring city, known for its affluent tech workers and luxury shopping, has fewer residents than the number of people sleeping rough in tents and doorways throughout the county. The trajectory tells an even grimmer story. Since 2020, the unsheltered population has exploded by 30%, with most of that increase concentrated in Seattle proper. This places the city third nationally for homelessness per capita, trailing only San Francisco and Los Angeles, according to federal housing and urban development data. You can measure the crisis in real time through emergency dispatch records. Seattle Fire Department responds to an average of 87 calls daily related to homeless encampments, ranging from overdoses and medical emergencies to fires caused by makeshift heating sources. That's 1 call every 16 minutes around the clock. The Department of Transportation reports clearing over 3,000 tons of debris from encampments in 2023 alone, including hundreds of used needles, human waste, and abandoned vehicles that have become permanent shelters. When city crews arrive to clean areas under Interstate 5 overpasses, they often find populations larger than some rural Washington towns. But these aren't just statistics on a government spreadsheet. These numbers represent a complete breakdown of public safety that's forcing even seasoned police officers to change how they do their jobs. When veteran Seattle police officers with 20+ years on the force openly admit they avoid certain areas during their shifts, you know the situation has crossed a dangerous threshold. The SoDo District, particularly the stretch under Interstate 5 between Royal Brome Way and Edgar Martinez Drive, has become what officers privately call a free fire zone, where anything goes. Walk through this area after sunset and you'll understand why. Over 400 people have established semi-permanent camps beneath the overpass, creating what essentially functions as an unregulated city within the city. Seattle Police Department incident reports show officers responding to the single location for stabbings, shootings, and overdoses at a rate of 12 times per week during 2024. Pioneer Square tells a similar story after dark. Once the crown jewel of Seattle's historic district, business owners now report that police response times have doubled from an average of 8 minutes in 2019 to 16 minutes today, according to data obtained through public records requests. The Seattle Police Officers Guild issued an unprecedented statement in March 2024, warning that officers increasingly refuse solo patrols in certain sectors due to credible threats to officer safety. This isn't typical union posturing over contract negotiations. These are seasoned professionals who've seen their authority completely erode in neighborhoods where open drug dealing and violence have become routine. Response time data reveals the harsh reality. Some areas now wait up to 45 minutes for emergency assistance. The drug crisis fueling this lawlessness goes deeper than most people realize. Fentanyl has fundamentally altered what homelessness looks like in Seattle, turning entire city blocks into scenes that would have been unimaginable just 5 years ago. You can witness this transformation firsthand on 3rd Avenue between Pike and Pine, where people bend forward at impossible angles, unconscious while standing in what medical professionals call the fentanyl fold. King County Medical Examiner data reveals that 70% of homeless deaths in 2024 involve fentanyl, compared to just 18% in 2018. That's a nearly 4-fold increase in less than 6 years. The synthetic opioid doesn't just kill, it creates a visible epidemic of users who appear catatonic for hours at a time on public sidewalks. Harborview Medical Center Emergency Department reports treating an average of 43 overdose cases daily, with 92% involving fentanyl, according to hospital records. These aren't occasional incidents. They're a constant stream that has fundamentally changed how emergency services operate throughout the city. The drug's potency means Seattle's streets now function as open-air markets, where dealers operate with virtual impunity. Police seizure data shows fentanyl arrests increased by 215% since 2021. Yet the problem continues expanding. Walk past Westlake Park at any hour and you'll see transactions happening in broad daylight, just steps from major retail stores and tourist attractions. But this isn't just about illegal drugs. It's about a housing market that's completely broken and pushing vulnerable people toward these deadly substances as their only escape. The housing market collapse didn't happen overnight, but the speed of Seattle's transformation has been breathtaking in its brutality. In 2015, you could rent a decent 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill for around $1,200. Today, that same unit costs over $2,200, representing an 85% increase, according to Seattle rental market data compiled by Apartment List. Amazon's arrival fundamentally rewired the city's economic landscape. The company now provides housing allowances of up to $40,000 annually for new employees, while Seattle's median household income sits at just $78,000. Do the math. Tech workers receive more money just for housing assistance than most families earn in total. This disparity created a domino effect that devastated long-established communities. The Central District, historically home to Seattle's African-American population since the 1940s, has seen its Black population drop from 73% in 1990 to less than 18% today, according to Census Bureau demographic data. Families who built generational wealth through homeownership suddenly found themselves unable to afford property taxes on homes their grandparents purchased decades earlier. The Displacement Risk Index, tracked by the University of Washington, identifies over 30 neighborhoods where longtime residents face extreme displacement pressure due to rapid rent increases and property value speculation. The numbers show just how impossible it's become for ordinary people to survive here, even when they're working full-time jobs that once provided middle-class stability. Financial experts recommend spending no more than 30% of your income on housing, but Seattle's rental market has made that golden rule a cruel joke. With median rent now reaching $3,600 monthly for a 1-bedroom apartment, you'd need to earn at least $120,000 annually just to meet that basic guideline, according to rental data from rentdata.org. Compare that to Seattle's minimum wage of $19.65 per hour. Working full-time at minimum wage generates roughly $40,000 annually before taxes. Even skilled positions like teaching, nursing, or firefighting typically start between $55,000 and $65,000, leaving workers earning less than half what they need for basic housing. The math becomes impossible when you factor in other necessities. King County Public Health estimates basic living costs, including food, transportation, healthcare, and utilities, at $2,800 monthly for a single person. Add median rent, and you're looking at monthly expenses exceeding $6,400, requiring an annual income of over $77,000 just to break even. Healthcare emergencies push people over the edge faster than any other single factor. Washington state medical bankruptcy filings increased by 43% since 2021, with the average debt totaling $89,000 according to federal court records. Even one unexpected medical bill or car repair can trigger a cascade toward homelessness for families already stretched beyond their limits. Weather makes this crisis deadlier than in warmer cities. Seattle's relentless rain and freezing temperatures transform homelessness from a housing crisis into a survival challenge that kills people. While cities like Los Angeles deal with heat-related deaths, Pacific Northwest weather creates a different kind of emergency where hypothermia becomes a leading cause of death among unsheltered populations. King County Medical Examiner reports a document 47 hypothermia deaths among homeless individuals during the 2023 to 2024 winter season, compared to just 12 in 2018 to 2019. That's a nearly four-fold increase in weather-related fatalities over 5 years. Temperatures don't need to drop below freezing to kill. Prolonged exposure to Seattle's typical 40-degree winter nights proves fatal when combined with wet conditions. The constant moisture creates additional health crises you wouldn't expect. Trench foot, respiratory infections, and skin diseases spread rapidly through encampments where people can't stay dry for weeks at a time. Seattle Public Health Emergency Room data shows weather-related illness admissions increased by 300% during the rainy season from October through March. Emergency shelter capacity becomes critically insufficient when weather turns deadly. Seattle operates roughly 2,800 emergency beds, but demand spikes to over 4,500 people during severe weather events, according to Human Services Department records. The city's overflow warming centers can accommodate only an additional 600 people, leaving thousands exposed to life-threatening conditions. Emergency medical services respond to weather-related homeless calls at twice the rate during winter months. The people experiencing this aren't who most Americans imagine. Forget everything you think you know about who becomes homeless in America. Today's Seattle streets tell a radically different story than the stereotypes most people carry. 25% of King County's homeless population works full-time jobs, according to the 2024 point-in-time count conducted by All Home. These aren't people who've given up. They're teachers, retail workers, and security guards who simply can't afford rent despite steady employment. Senior citizen homelessness has exploded by 68% since 2019, with over 3,200 people aged 55 and older now living unsheltered throughout the county. Many worked their entire lives, paid into Social Security, and never imagined they'd spend their golden years sleeping in cars or under bridges. Perhaps most heartbreaking, families with children represent the fastest-growing segment of Seattle's homeless population. School district data shows over 4,000 students experiencing homelessness during the 2023 academic year, a 42% increase from pre-pandemic levels. These children attend regular classes while their parents work multiple jobs, all while living in vehicles or rotating between temporary shelters. College graduates now make up 18% of the newly homeless population, according to Seattle University's Homelessness Research Institute. Computer programmers, nurses, and even attorneys find themselves priced out of a city where their skills once guaranteed middle-class stability. The demographic shift reflects a fundamental breakdown that extends far beyond addiction or mental illness. Real people with names and stories illustrate this human tragedy. These individual stories put faces on the crisis statistics, revealing how quickly life can unravel in Seattle's unforgiving economy. Marcus worked as a software engineer at a major tech company for 8 years before a layoff in 2023. With no savings cushion against Seattle's brutal housing costs, he lost his Belltown apartment within 3 months and now sleeps in his Toyota Camry while job hunting from coffee shops. Dorothy, 72 years old, represents the growing elderly homeless population. After her husband died and medical bills consumed their retirement savings, she couldn't afford the $1,500 monthly rent increase on their Capitol Hill apartment. She's been living in her Honda Civic for 14 months, moving between different neighborhoods to avoid parking citations that now total over $3,200. Army veteran James returned from deployment with PTSD and found that his military housing allowance couldn't compete with Seattle rental prices. Despite qualifying for Veterans Affairs benefits, the waiting list for subsidized housing stretches 18 months, according to VA records. He camps near the Georgetown waterfront, one of over 4,800 veterans experiencing homelessness in King County. Sarah aged out of foster care at 18 with no family support network. The Transition Age Youth Program provides just $600 monthly assistance, far below what's needed for even shared housing in Seattle. At 20, she's been homeless for 2 years while working part-time retail jobs and attending community college. The systems designed to help these people are completely overwhelmed. Seattle's safety net has become a cruel illusion where seeking help often means joining impossibly long waiting lists that offer false hope to desperate people. The Housing Authority of King County reports average wait times of 42 months for Section 8 vouchers, with over 37,000 people currently on the list, according to 2024 enrollment data. Shelter capacity tells an even grimmer story. King County operates 2,800 emergency beds during peak winter months, but demand consistently exceeds 4,500 people nightly. That means roughly 37% of people seeking emergency shelter get turned away every single night, forced back onto streets where temperatures can prove fatal. Social workers carry caseloads that make meaningful assistance impossible. The Washington State Department of Social and Health Services reports individual caseworkers handling an average of 183 active cases, nearly triple the recommended maximum of 65 cases per worker. You simply cannot provide effective help when you have 3 minutes per person per week. Navigation centers, designed to connect homeless individuals with services, show disappointing results despite good intentions. Seattle's 3 facilities successfully house just 18% of people who complete their 90-day programs, according to Human Services Department tracking data. The remaining 82% return to the streets, often more discouraged than when they started. Even when people want help, the system consistently fails them. Meanwhile, the broader community is reaching a breaking point. The community response to Seattle's homelessness crisis has triggered a secondary catastrophe: the systematic departure of working families who built the city's middle-class foundation. Census Bureau data shows King County lost over 68,000 residents earning between $50,000 and $100,000 annually from 2020 to 2023, representing a 12% decline in middle-income households. Businesses are fleeing alongside families. The Downtown Seattle Association reports that 47 retail establishments closed permanently in the core business district during 2024, with 63% citing safety concerns as their primary reason for relocation, according to exit surveys. Starbucks, ironically born in Seattle, closed 5 downtown locations due to what corporate executives termed challenging circumstances. Property crime statistics reveal why families and businesses feel unsafe. Seattle Police Department data shows vehicle break-ins increased by 128% in areas with large homeless encampments compared to 2019 levels. Shoplifting incidents rose by 94% downtown, forcing retailers to hire private security or simply abandon locations they'd operated for decades. School enrollment tells the most troubling story about Seattle's future. Seattle Public Schools lost over 4,000 students between 2020 and 2024, with the steepest declines occurring in urban core schools, according to district enrollment data. Families with children are choosing suburban districts or leaving Washington State entirely rather than navigating the daily reality of encampments near elementary schools. Analysis by the Municipal Research and Services Center. The city's 2024 homeless services budget alone totals $487 million, representing a 230% increase from 2018 spending levels. Lost business revenue tells an equally staggering story. The Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce estimates downtown businesses lose approximately $260 million annually due to reduced foot traffic, property damage, and security costs directly related to the homelessness crisis. Major retailers report sales declines of up to 40% in areas with large encampments. Emergency services bear crushing financial strain that taxpayers ultimately absorb. Seattle Fire Department overtime costs increased by $68 million since 2020, primarily due to homeless-related calls that now represent 37% of all emergency responses, according to department budget documents. Police overtime spending jumped by $42 million over the same period. Property values reflect the crisis's economic impact on homeowners. Real estate data from Zillow shows properties within 3 blocks of established encampments lost an average of 18% of their value compared to similar homes in unaffected neighborhoods. That translates to roughly $34,000 in lost equity for typical Seattle homeowners. The financial hemorrhaging affects every taxpayer, from small business owners to families struggling with their own housing costs. Other cities are watching Seattle as a cautionary tale. Seattle's homelessness crisis isn't an isolated Pacific Northwest problem. It's a preview of what's coming to cities across America. Portland experienced a 55% increase in unsheltered homelessness between 2020 and 2024, while Los Angeles County now houses over 75,000 homeless individuals, according to the latest Homeless Services Authority count. San Francisco spends over $300 million annually on homeless services, yet sees encampments expanding throughout the city center. Federal housing policies accelerated these trends nationwide. The Department of Housing and Urban Development reports a critical shortage of 7 million affordable rental units across the United States, with the gap widening by approximately 400,000 units annually. Meanwhile, federal investment in public housing has declined by 77% since the 1980s when adjusted for inflation. Climate migration will intensify urban density pressures that Seattle experiences today. The Internal Revenue Service tracks interstate migration patterns, showing over 200,000 people relocating to Washington state annually, many fleeing extreme weather events in other regions. These population movements strain housing markets that already can't accommodate existing residents. Economic inequality creates the foundation for widespread homelessness. Federal Reserve data shows the wealth gap between top earners and middle-class families reached historic levels in 2024, with income inequality now higher than during the Great Depression. When housing costs consume 60 to 70% of median income in major cities, millions of Americans live one emergency away from the streets. Yet there are signs that change might be possible. Effective solutions do exist, proven by cities that have successfully reduced homelessness through evidence-based approaches rather than throwing money at symptoms. Houston reduced its homeless population by 63% since 2011 using aggressive housing-first strategies that place people in permanent housing immediately, then provide support services, according to Coalition for the Homeless data. Finland virtually eliminated rough sleeping by guaranteeing housing as a human right and investing in rapid rehousing programs. Their Housing First model achieves an 84% success rate in maintaining permanent housing after 2 years, compared to traditional shelter-based approaches that succeed with only 37% of participants. Mental health and addiction treatment innovations show remarkable promise when properly funded. Portugal's decriminalization model, combined with comprehensive treatment, reduced drug-related deaths by 95% and HIV infections by 98%, according to European Monitoring Center data. Switzerland's supervised consumption sites eliminated overdose deaths entirely while connecting 76% of participants to addiction treatment programs. Public-private partnerships can accelerate housing development dramatically. Salt Lake City partnered with local developers to create supportive housing units at 67% below market rate, reducing chronic homelessness by 91% between 2005 and 2015. The program saves taxpayers approximately $11,000 annually per person compared to emergency service costs. These approaches require political courage and sustained investment, but they work when implemented comprehensively. The question becomes whether there's still time to implement real solutions. Seattle stands at a critical crossroads where the next 2 to 3 years will determine whether the city becomes permanently divided into tech prosperity and human misery, or begins the difficult work of rebuilding a functional community. Urban planning experts estimate that comprehensive intervention could reduce unsheltered homelessness by 70% within 5 years, but only if political leaders commit to spending approximately $2.8 billion upfront on housing construction and support services. The math of prevention versus crisis management reveals the true cost of inaction. Every dollar invested in preventive housing saves taxpayers $4.20 in emergency services, law enforcement, and cleanup costs, according to economic analysis by the University of Washington. Continuing current approaches will cost Seattle over $8 billion during the next decade while solving nothing. Political will remains the decisive factor. Successful intervention requires sustained commitment beyond typical election cycles, something Seattle's fragmented political leadership has consistently failed to demonstrate. Public polling shows 68% of residents support major housing investment, but opposition emerges when specific locations or tax increases are proposed. Without dramatic change, Seattle's future looks like a tale of two cities where tech workers live in secured buildings, while 40,000 people remain permanently unsheltered. The alternative requires acknowledging that Seattle's homelessness crisis reflects fundamental choices about what kind of society we're willing to build and fund. The question isn't whether solutions exist, it's whether Seattle possesses the collective courage to implement them before the point of no return becomes a permanent reality.